Today, I've had the pleasure to have a conversation with podcast host and author of the book Live Fully and Lead Authentically by Kurt Busch. Kurt is a co-founder of the Brimstone Coaching Group and the Brimstone Coaching podcast hosts. Welcome to another episode of Becoming Secure with Max Mindset. Kurt, welcome to my podcast. I'm really excited to chat with you today. Obviously, I want to hear all about you so that my listeners can get to know you a little bit better. But I know that you are a host yourself for the Brimstone Coaching podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about how that journey came to be? Because what I know as a coach myself is that we tend to go on this soul-searching journey before we kind of realize that we're going to go down this path of coaching. And I want to know what that looked like for you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'd be glad to tell you. About a decade ago, I had a really good friend who helped me through some career struggles, I would say. I spent the first part of my career in a manufacturing setting. I went to get my master's. Then I led a nonprofit for a little while before I started coaching. And in the middle of getting my master's degree, leading a nonprofit organization, I had a friend that I would call who was also in the same master's program with me. I would call him and I would say, his name's Chris. He's my now business partner. He would answer. I'd say, Chris, you just would not believe what's going on. Honestly, if I'm being super honest, Maggie, it would be you wouldn't believe how much these people suck. How hard these people are to lead. And every time, without fail, Chris would listen really well. And then he would ask me one question. He would say, okay, now what are you contributing to the situation? Mm-hmm. And the first 5 times he asked me, I was like, shut up, Chris. Didn't you hear me tell you? The problem is them, not me. And that really was the beginning. That question over and over from a good friend asking, what part do you play? That was the beginning of a journey of increased self-awareness, of understanding that I can't control anything in a given situation but myself. Right. And if I want my experience in life to be different, if I want the teams that I lead to be different, if I want different results in my life, I get to work on me. And that was hugely transformative for me to realize that. And that began a journey of me working on me. And that changed fundamentally who I am.
I love that.
I began implementing some of that in the way that I led this nonprofit. And what happened is, I don't know if you know this, but 2020 was wild.
Yeah, that just kind of flew by, didn't it?
Yeah. 2020, what I learned leading a nonprofit with volunteer leaders, with, just a different culture than a for-profit environment. What I learned was I really, really loved leading people through times of anxiety, through helping them become aware of why they show up the way they do. And the further we got from COVID, the more the people I led were coaching themselves. And I wasn't coaching as much as I'd liked. So that led to, hey, Chris, friend of mine, let's launch a coaching practice together. And then that coaching practice spawned off the podcast. But really the podcast is just hey, who are Chris and Kurt? How do we get to know these two coaches a little better?
Got you. I love this story. I think it's beautiful that you have a friend in your life that holds you accountable in a very graceful way with consistency and without judgment, it sounds like, even because he just offered a perspective. And although maybe it didn't click immediately, there was a journey there where you got to become increasingly self-aware, as you say, and take accountability, which seems to be kind of the key word here, is the accountability piece. I guess I'm curious. I really enjoy having conversations with men, and I enjoy the aspect of getting to dig a little deeper into to who you guys are, because it is different from my own experience. And the more I surround myself with you, there's such a level of depth and curiosity that I feel like is different with you. And I would just love to kind of hear you talk a little bit more about maybe some favorite memories or takeaways from your own discovery of self. Like what was the absolute most pivotal moment, and some of your aha moments, because I believe there's going to be so many men out there who are still trying to figure it all out and are not really sure where to even begin. And I don't know if there's enough voices out there for them, and I would love for you to offer that voice.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I would affirm that. I think Chris and I both would affirm that we don't see enough men that are willing to do this work. Don't see enough. That sounds a little more judgmental than I wanted it to sound, but certainly we find that women are more willing to do the work that we do than guys are, and I think that saddens us. Um, I think largely we would say that that's coming from a false narrative of whatever like toughness means or whatever mental model of like being capable. There's a whole lot to uncover there, but I would affirm what you say. Um,
Mhm.
I think the aha moments, if I was going to narrow it down, I mean, I think those moments where Chris would ask me, how do I contribute? Like beginning to see it, that's right up there. But I can point back to a couple times in my first formation, like elementary, middle school years. So like, 10 to 15 years where where something happened. I would say little T trauma, right? Not a crisis, not even anything that hit the radar at the time, but little T trauma. Something happened um, that that taught me how to be safe in the world. Um, one of those. Do I have time? Can I share one of those?
Please do.
Okay, I was in third grade, Maggie. And, do you know what a spelling bee is?
I do know what a spelling bee is.
Okay, I don't like to assume anybody not originally from the U.S. knows what this is because it's kind of a thing.
Very
Um,
kind. Very considerate.
I gotta tell you, I was a killer speller in the third grade, Maggie, and I went into my little bitty rural school spelling bee, and I was gonna kick butt, and I knew it. Um, I got to the final round. Final round, and we're in a gymnasium full of classmates and other kids that are older and younger, and parents, and all the things. And I get my word. I'm one of three left in the competition, and I get my word from the moderator. The moderator says your word is farm, which is really weird. I had a third grader like that's a really easy third grade word. Looking back on it, right? But I knew like I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna win this competition. I walked up to the microphone and I did what every kid does. I said, farm, FRAM. And spoiler alert, that's not how you spell farm. And the moderator rings a little bell, like one of those hotel bells, and that's the indicator that I spelled the word wrong.
Yeah.
And I knew immediately, like this was not a hard word. This was not like a like Kurt stumped. This was Kurt messed up. And I remember in that moment, I learned that if I stand out, I have a chance of being embarrassed. And I made a promise to myself. I didn't know I was doing it. I made a promise to myself that I would never ever be embarrassed again.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
I can look back and see it now. So I wouldn't stand out. I wouldn't use my voice. I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't do anything that would draw attention that could backfire me.
Oh.
The aha moment. See, here's the beauty. The aha moment is as an adult, this self awareness that Chris and I do together. I had a really good coach too, by the way. I had a good coach that could help me unpack how that moment in third grade shows up in 35-year-old Kurt,
Mm.
right? How does I'm afraid of being embarrassed, so I promise myself I'm never going to be embarrassed. How does that impact Kurt in a boardroom or
Mm.
Kurt, with a volunteer leader? It's huge.
Mm.
It affects every part of how I show up. So the aha moment is I get to change this, right? I get to tell my nervous system that danger is not present like it used to be. Third grade Kurt, fourth grade, fifth grade Kurt needed that promise, right? School's dangerous. kids, kids are mean, right?
Yeah, it's tough out
So
there.
it's tough out there for a kid.
It's tough out there.
Yeah. So I needed it. Like
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I made that promise and I probably needed it and it probably served me well,
Right.
not as an adult.
Well, I am curious though, because I mean, I love that you shared this story with me, and it was really heartfelt at times as
Yeah.
well. But it's something about how it manifested as an adult, because I hear you have the experience, and then I hear you explain the outcome. But
Yeah.
what was the process in the middle that looked messy?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's men out there who will be like, "Oh, that I've done, that I've thought, that has happened to me too," but
Yep.
they don't know that's a childhood experience manifested that way in the process of growing up. So I would love to hear that version.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I when I served this nonprofit, when I led this group, I would sit at a table with people that at the time, like I didn't know how to put words to this at the time, but I would sit at this table and I'd look at people across from me and I would say, that person's smarter than me, that person's smarter than me, that person's smarter than me. And of course, all of us think the worst, right? When we don't know ourselves, we tend to think of the worst of ourselves. Um, so what I would do is that third grade Kurt would cause me to say, if I speak amongst this group of people that I deem to be smarter than me, that I look up to, that I respect, there is a danger that they're going to think I'm dumb,
Mm,
right? There's a danger that I'm going to be embarrassed by what I say, and I don't want them to think less of me, right? Now, that was third grade Kurt. Absolutely. That was, oh, if I stand up and like stand out, there's a danger there.
mm,
There wasn't. There isn't. I mean, might people think that I'm not as smart as them? Sure. But the risk or the danger or the threat is so different as an adult than it was when I was 10.
right. But did it ever, like, for instance, a way in which I can imagine it manifested is like, if you knew that you were gonna have a presentation at work, for instance, then you would make dang sure that you knew that topic, you would not fail. Like,
Yeah.
if your nervous system is telling you that, like, the main thing that cannot happen is that I embarrass myself, then you probably put in a significant amount of work to make sure that wouldn't
Yeah.
happen. So the
Yeah.
the perfectionist in you probably overperformed a little bit. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah, we in our coaching practice would say that that's the second job, the invisible second job that we work, right? My
I like that.
my yeah, I mean, I think it's true. My organization, if I'm creating a presentation and I'm like protecting myself against somebody who's going to think I'm incompetent, if I'm focusing on how do I keep people from thinking less of me, I'm not fully focusing on what that organization needs from me. Now I'm doing two jobs. And to quote the wise philosopher Ron Swanson, we we need to whole ass one thing, not half ass two things. Right?
Right.
If I devote my focus between trying to be safe and trying to do my job well, one of those is going to steal from the other. It's going to rob from the other. So I think on the surface it can look like these promises to be safe. On the surface, I think they can look like they're actually serving us well. But I think really deep down, if we're honest, that energy that I would put into protecting myself is actually taking away from what the organization needs me to do.
Yeah. What I take away from it in terms of the way that I resonate with it is that I know that I put my best foot forward and I perform incredibly well when I'm doing something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, when I am passionate about it, if I need to like stand up and have a presentation about like my life or attachment theory or my opinions on generational trauma, or just to simply sit down and show up for a friend that just needs to talk and have someone to vent to or communicate with, I know that I I would not have a problem whatsoever having that presentation. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even need to really prep for that because I would know that, hey, this is something that I am deeply passionate about. It
Yeah.
doesn't require too much preparation. However, if I need to have a presentation at my job right now, something that I'm probably shouldn't say, but less passionate about. I'm grateful for my job and I have had so much fun. But don't get me wrong, I am very passionate about this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they all know that. It's fine.
Yeah.
However, I I know that I would have had to put in so much more work for that presentation because first and foremost, like because I'm not as passionate, it's hard for me to put in the extra work and effort to learn it all properly. I'm not saying
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it because the discipline in me knows how to do so, but it requires more of me to do it. And that's that invisible job that you're talking about. And what I'm taking away from this is that when we surrender and do the work, when we sit back and heal and do that introspective journey, we become so in tune with what we're supposed to do that it becomes effortless
Yeah.
because that's how it was supposed to be all along.
Yeah.
My opinion is God put us here for a purpose. And the more we listen to God, the more we get aligned with that purpose and the
Mhm.
easier life actually gets because that invisible job that you're talking about is no longer there.
Yeah.
Do you resonate with that?
100% agree.
Mm,
100% agree. I mean, I think there's such a difference between you putting in the work to learn how to give a presentation for something you're not passionate about. That the energy it takes you to do that is so much different than the energy it takes you to like protect yourself, right? One is growing you and stretching you. The other is keeping you stuck, is tearing you down, is pulling you backwards. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So now I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the stuff that may be a little bit more challenging to talk about, maybe not at all. And you're free to stop me at any point if you're not
Yeah.
comfortable talking about it. But have you reflected upon how this manifested in dating, for instance?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I would say this. I think it manifests everywhere. You know, I think in so I'm married. I've got a couple kids. Um, I think for a long time it would manifest itself in a similar way with my wife, in a way where I'm just worried that she's gonna think I'm dumb, or I'm worried that she's gonna think less of me. What if this woman I love starts to go, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, you know? That same third grade Kurt is worried about being embarrassed in front of my wife, just like I was in front of that spelling bee judge or in front of a potential boardroom full of people.
Right.
Um,
Does she know
s-
that?
oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she knows. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think the punchline, I think with all of that is that no matter where I enter in, that fear or that protection is keeping me from being authentically me,
Mm,
right?
mm,
It's keeping me from being fully husband or dad. It's keeping me from being fully a small business owner, whatever it is.
mm.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever really thought about that, but I think definitely, I mean, relationally, yeah, I mean, it can't not show up in those places, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you seem like you are aware of it, and the fact that you have communicated it with your wife too, and she's aware of it. So it seems as though you probably have done more reflection than you realize. I do believe that we are all a result of what we've ever been exposed to.
Yeah.
And that is going to look different for everyone because that's going to look different for me and my siblings, even because they are going to like the version of my parents that my oldest brother had and the version of my parents that I had, not the same. There was a level
Yeah.
of maturity that happened there with from the first to the third child, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's that's how small we can actually divide between people and our experiences growing up, although it's the same household with the same parents in the same
Yeah.
community. But
Yeah.
none of us are going to have the same experience.
Yeah.
And I always like to kind of dig into what we've observed from our parents' parenting and marriage and
Yeah.
see what did we take away from that subconsciously into our own relationships. I'm not married myself. I don't have any kids. But I still realize how I kind of taken away stuff from their marriage into my relationships while I've been dating, for instance. And I'm curious if you've reflected on what that would look like for you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I would start by saying you're familiar with Brene Brown. Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way Brene Brown says people don't suck on purpose to piss me off. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. I think that's true for me. I think it's true for you. I think it's true for the world
Yeah.
in general. I think that's how I view people, and I think I hold a similar view when I think about my parents, or my parenting, right?
Hmm.
So I want to start by saying like all the grace in the world to my folks who did the best they could, and I see things, I think generationally, I see in my parents, a really deeply held value of like loyalty to an employer,
Mm.
right? My father worked at one place for 40 years, and Maggie, I gotta tell you, that sounds like torture to me.
My dad
Um,
did too. And that sounds like torture to me.
it so does. I mean, I think I'm an Enneagram 7, if that means anything to you. I just want to chase fun things for a little bit. So I see things like that where like here's a core value that we hold as a family, and then having to kind of unpack like, oh, I don't have to hold that as a core value for myself, right? Um, because culturally we're in a different place. Like employers don't view employees the same way. All of those things change. So I mean, I look at things like that. I even see like gender dynamics generationally are so different. Um, the what does a wife do? What does a husband do? My wife and I always joke around that like we are stereotypically flipped. She's tough and handy, and I want to talk about feelings all day. Like I'd love to sit down with a good book and talk about my feelings all day, and my wife is like the handy person in the house. So I think just having to realize like those things, um, they're given to us, um, good, bad, or indifferent. Like those values, those ideas of what normal is, those are given to us by our families of origin. And I think there's something beautiful about realizing like I don't have to continue to hold them. I don't have to like shame them or name them as super bad or negative, but I do get to decide what I want to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Are your parents still married?
Yeah.
Was there ever a doubt in your mind whether or not you were going to get married?
No. So my wife and I have talked about this too. So if she hears this, she will not be shocked. But I think growing up in the Midwest of the US, there's just not even a doubt. And I think we both look back now and say, gosh, we were just babies. Like we had no idea what that meant. And we've both been honest enough to say like we are really glad we're here and we have high school age kids now. But yeah, we didn't experience that question like we hope our kids experience that question.
That is a good point because, well, I mean, I believe it's a fundamental value that the Midwest kind of holds, right?
It is.
Is it safe to assume it's Christian values?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question, Maggie. I think people call it Christian values. I'm not sure it's actually Christian value. Like I think if we were to enter into a theological conversation, I'm not sure it holds up to a theological conversation, but
I hear you.
I do think people name it as Midwest tough, Midwest Christian values, Midwest like I mean, farming and agriculture is so big, and I think there was a generation not that much older than my parents that got married because you needed kids to work on a farm. You know,
Mm.
it was probably utilitarian more than anything.
I
So
hear you. Okay, yeah, there's that
yeah,
component of it. Yeah,
yeah,
that isn't necessarily deeply rooted in the Christian value of the marriage and the commitment and honoring your children, but
yeah,
also honoring your parents. It was also kind of a business component of it. But nonetheless, though, I still believe that it's a beautiful value to hold, to
yeah.
value the commitment, to value the marriage, and to never question whether or not that's the path that you're going to walk down. Because I do believe that there is an increase in society across the world right now where the rates of divorce are increasing.
Yeah.
That being said, people are also remarrying after a divorce, so it's not that cut and dry. There's probably a huge percentage of people who got married too young to the wrong person, and
Yeah.
therefore, but still believed in love and wanted to try again. Or, but nonetheless, I do believe that there is some value in having that fundamental
Yeah.
value there growing up,
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna lie to you. It's pretty hard out there. It's pretty hard being a woman in her late 20s trying to get married and settle down to have children and a family.
Yeah.
A dream of mine. Getting married has been a dream forever. I always wanted to be in a relationship. I always wanted to
Yeah.
be committed. I loved having a leader in my life, and I missed it always because I didn't necessarily have that in my father throughout my teen years, and
Sure.
I needed that role model. And although my parents have been committed and married for over 40 years, which I'm so grateful for, and I see the effort that they put into that, I see how they're holding the family together and how we have all of these beautiful memories together as a family, as a whole, no matter how
Yeah.
hard it was for them to hold it all together.
Yeah.
But my dream too is to be able to hold that for my kids and have that experience for my kids. But
Yeah.
people are becoming increasingly anti-committal, and I am deeply concerned. And that is also why I am having all of these conversations, maybe particularly with men, because I am trying to understand how I can create a safe space for a man to want to settle down with a woman like myself. And I am struggling to understand where to even begin.
Yeah, boy, I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I think what's true is, I mean, I'm 41, Maggie, and the world was a different place when my wife and I were dating and engaged and first married. I mean, we got married before you could hold an iPhone in your hand. I mean, it's just such a different place. I think when you talk about commitment and you talk about like how do we kind of address this question of marriage or commitment. I think here's how I think about it, Maggie. I do think I mean, I would agree with you 100%. There is something really, really beautiful about commitment. Um, I think, I think my hope, like when I think about my kids, I think my hope is whether it's marriage or what college do you go to, what career do you jump in. I want them to answer these questions from their best thinking, not from not from a place of like, well, I'm 21. I guess I need to find myself a mate, you know? And I think in this part of the world, in this Midwest part of the world, we have a little Christian college here in town, in the town that I live in. It's an amazing college. I love it. We love it. It's great for the community. But in general, like the assumption is by the time by the time people graduate, you need to find yourself a partner. Um, and and sometimes that's great. Other times that's not coming from best thinking, right? So I think my advocacy is always how do we make these decisions from our best thinking, not from a mental model or an assumption that we hold. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It certainly does. Because it's coming from a place of knowing yourself and
Yeah.
therefore choosing a mate to grow with in alignment as opposed
Yeah.
to grow with in resentment. Because there might
Yes.
be that component of we weren't meant to be together, yet tradition brought us here and expectations brought us here, and prematurely now we're faced with the situation where we're actually not compatible. And of course
Yeah.
that is a devastating situation to find yourself with, which I
Yeah.
guess I believe is also why I am grateful that I am still young and I am still perfectly capable of raising children and even having them, right? So that's not the biggest problem yet, but I would have loved to see dating being slightly easier, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's definitely led me down this path of serious introspection, because I've dated in all ages at this point. I've been in relationships for long term with people who have been my own age, and I've been in a relationship with someone 15 years older, 6 years younger. It's like
Yeah.
I've definitely been around trying to figure it out. Like, is it an age thing? Is it a generational thing? But what I'm coming to understand is that it's actually a upbringing thing. It's how
Mm-mm.
were they raised? What is the
Yeah.
common denominator of all of these? And I don't take my first relationship into account in this one simply because we were so young and we just simply weren't meant to be together. But in the other relationships that I've had, they were they would have either divorced parents, or
Sure.
yeah, it would be some sort of fear regarding how to navigate conflict resolution for the rest of your life. I think I definitely had an ex where, although their parents were together and seemingly great, I think there was a component of misery or prison imprisonment that might have caused some sort of
Yeah.
fear without passing complete judgment there, or a major assumption. But nonetheless, the anti-committal paid a component, like it was still kind of happened to be the case here. Really scared to settle down, really scared to walk down that path of commitment and having that responsibility for someone else other than yourself. And maybe it's an
Yeah.
age component because they were younger, but I do believe that the component is always like, what role models do they have in love? Like, what are they
Yeah.
looking up to in love? And does it look like a beautiful coupling, or is it two miserable people holding it together for what?
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, I would affirm everything you just said. Here's a saying that we use a lot that it feels relevant. Everywhere you go, there you are. It's true for me. It's true for you. It's true for my wife. It's true for my kids. I think that's true when we think about relationships too. I mean, your last episode about personality types. I listened to the guest talk about the idea of when we want people to change, we really want people to act like us. And I think that's true, and change is possible to an extent. And everywhere we go, there we are. If we struggle with commitment in one area, we're going to struggle with commitment in another area. And I think with all of these, like this is what we tell our kids too. Like if you're around a potential dating partner, everywhere they go, there they are. Good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
Um, that sounds a little cynical. I am aware of that, but I think that is a mantra that seems pretty true.
I definitely have shared that. I definitely said that before. Everywhere you go, there you are. And that's true, right? And I think very often when we are coupled with someone, they hold up a mirror of who you are so clearly. It's almost
Yeah,
intimidating and fearful because now you realize what you have to work on and you realize what you have to do. And maybe there's a component there of, I really don't want to do the work because it
yeah,
requires effort, it requires responsibility, it requires awareness, and it is humbling, it's painful, and very often very lonely. And it's not an easy path to walk down voluntarily. And I think that's why a lot of people avoid, and
yeah,
hence the avoidant attachment, because you don't want to address it, you don't want to do it. And that makes it hard out there for
yeah,
us who wants to commit, but also come in too strong, right? Because that's the counterpart of the attachment theories, that you have the avoidant and the anxious. And when you have an anxious person coupled with an avoidant, it just brings out all the worst parts of both of them.
sure,
Because it just mirrors something there that is like, it requires some serious effort to make that coupling work, and it's not easy. So that's why becoming secure is the ideal for me, because I feel as though walking down that path will help me attract someone who's secure also.
yeah, yeah. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
I would love to learn more about attachment theory. This is not something I know a lot about.
Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me and just share some of your own personal journey and be so vulnerable. I'm really grateful for especially that component, because I believe that the more we all share our stories, we normalize that too, and we normalize being vulnerable and recognizing that life isn't always easy. And if we can just reach out a hand or be a conversationalist, we might actually save a lot of people out there.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's just been a real pleasure to talk with you.
Go check out Kurt's podcast and his book. You will find all the information in the description below. And as always, stay curious and get to know yourself better.